The gun battle continues in Baton Rouge now that the governor has vetoed a bill that would allow people to carry concealed handguns without permits or training. State lawmakers are threatening to override his decision. And as Devin Bartolotta reports, police chiefs are siding with the governor.
Which is a semi-automatic.
Since 2017, Isaiah Stewart has been teaching firearm safety and concealed carry classes.
Because when you grab the firearm, I want your trigger finger up and away from the trigger guard.
From the Mid-City pulpit where he preaches.
The law section is one of the most important sections to teach about, because I have to make sure that if you are going to be under my number and you are involved in a shooting, that you understand the legal ramifications that come with this.
But his full-day classes focused on safety, liability, and gun laws may no longer be required if the Louisiana legislature overturns the governor's veto on a constitutional carry bill, allowing anyone over 21 who can have a gun to carry one.
The readily available access to concealed weapons not only is going to endanger the law enforcement community, it will endanger the general public as well.
Sheriffs and police chiefs from across the state asked legislators Thursday to let the bill die with the governor's veto.
This concealed carry law was not well thought out, and whether you're from the north or the south of Louisiana or central Louisiana, it's important that we have a law that works.
Orleans Parish Sheriff Marlon Gusman and NOPD Chief Sean Ferguson were there, along with sheriffs from LaFourche, St. John, and Tangipahoa parishes. As of this year, 21 states have passed some version of constitutional carry, including Kentucky, where data shows gun violence stayed the same or increased from 2019 to 2020. The NRA has encouraged members to call representatives and demand a veto override here in Louisiana. But safety advocates say no training is no good.
I really hope that this constitutional carry does not pass in the state of Louisiana at its current state.
Devin Bartolotta, Eyewitness News.
Override sessions are scheduled annually for the third week of July, but are usually canceled when the majority of members vote not to hold it.